What can you say about this film that hasn't already been said? It's fucking horrible! This movie still has Hollywood cringing and grinding their teeth every time they hear the title. And rightfully so, because this movie came out after a lengthy success of supernatural and psychological thrillers. During the 1990s, there were a lot of supernatural movies on the rise. Movies with supernatural plots are films that consist of themes that support the story beyond reality, such as apparitions, ghosts, science fiction, and phenomenons. A lot of directors tried breaking into the genre, and for the time, there weren't many films that held up with the audience. Right around the turn of the century, films like The Sixth Sense, Unbreakable, and Signs jumped onto the big screen, all of which were directed by M Night Shyamalan, who's built a reputation for creating films revolving around paranoia and twist endings. And for the time, it seemed like he would go on to create more of these great movies that would have the audiences scratching their heads. And he did. When he took on this project, he had people scratching their heads on how this movie was even spawned into theaters. This movie's nothing short of a big fuck you to all movie viewers everywhere. This movie sets you up for more of a disappointment than when a fat kid can't have seconds for dessert. It begs the question why 20th Century Fox blew their money on this fucking bullshit after reading this horrific screenplay. The premise of this movie is based on an apocalyptic event causing people to kill themselves. I'll do the best I can to explain this shitfest and hopefully won't commit suicide myself. The movie begins in New York. That's right, the most unoriginal place you could ever film a movie. Right off the bat, people are committing suicide, and the plot drops you right off in the middle of things. So automatically you think, hey, this is gonna be a great movie, right? Well, no. This movie did just the opposite. The only thing this movie accomplished was getting people fucking confused on whether they should have walked out after the opening credits. We meet a science teacher named Elliot, played by Mark Wahlberg, who sets out to leave Philadelphia with his friend Julian, played by John Leguizamo, and his wife Alma, played by Zooey Deschanel, after hearing the suicides may be caused by airborne toxins connected with terrorism. Mark Wahlberg overplays his character way too much in this film, and his character comes off as some sort of floppish guy who's way too sensitive even in times of crisis. He's constantly oblivious and skeptic about what's happening.
What? No.
In the scene when the train stops and pulls up to the town of Filbert, Mark Wahlberg goes to the conductor and asks,
"What do you mean? Where are we?"
Is he that fucking lazy he couldn't look at the sign getting off the train like everybody else? I mean, why couldn't he just ask one of the passengers or just look it up on his phone? In the beginning of the movie, the principal tells the teaching staff that the first suicides occurred in Central Park. And here's how Mark Wahlberg responds.
Central Park? That's kind of odd.
That's odd? Did he think the principal was lying? If someone told me random people were dying, I wouldn't question it. I'd call everyone I knew to make sure they weren't in a body bag. I think it's more odd how Mark Wahlberg has an uncanny resemblance to John Cena. Then we get to Alma, who's as useless as wiping your ass with poison ivy. She doesn't really offer anything extra to the plot except that she's Elliot's wife and her character isn't really believable. The entire movie she's constantly making faces that looks like she forgot her lines or she's about to shit her pants. And by constantly I mean all the fucking time. Later, they meet a man with the longest, most depressing face I've ever seen who's obsessed with plants. He gives us our first explanation that the killings may not be caused by terrorism but by the plants of the earth which are setting off chemicals affecting human behavior. So, as expected in these kind of movies, they drive off together, find some more dead bodies, and meet some other people along the way. In the commotion of things, a woman is on the phone with her daughter who tells her that all the people in Princeton, New Jersey are dead. And I'll give you one guess how Mark Wahlberg reacted to that news.
What do you mean? Everyone's dead?
Like, why is he so in disbelief? They've encountered tons of bodies up to this point. Why is this so startling? To make matters even more confusing, they all devise to split up into groups and go their own way. Shortly after, they witness more people dying, and Wahlberg comes up with a theory that the planet is attacking people based on group sizes, which is probably the most convenient theory ever explained in movie history. See, the problem with this movie is you don't know how to respond to it. It doesn't feel like you're watching a paranoia thriller, but rather it comes off as a B-list movie, which is surprising since Shyamalan has always been able to connect with most audiences. He did an interview with IndieWire, and this is what he had to say. The happening didn't land with critics and audiences because of its tone. I think it's a consistent kind of farce humor, you know, like The Blob. The key to The Blob is that it just never takes itself seriously. Whoa, I'm not one to be confrontational, but how do you not take The Blob seriously? That movie was awesome, with its classic 80s special effects and graphic scenes that would make any modern parent write a letter to the MPAA. It's like Shyamalan knew he fucked up trying to make this a serious movie and tried covering it up by saying he was really going for low quality. Now, I'm not one to argue with the guy, believe me, but why the fuck did you cast a serious actor like Mark Wahlberg to play a role in this fucking Doomsday movie? If he was really going for low quality, he should have just casted Laird the Cable Guy and Amy fucking Schumer. It's also strange how he made that comparison because the nursery man, played by Frank Collison, was in the movie The Blob. And if you don't believe me, here's the scene to prove it. Pretty fucking gross. Actually, if you play it back, you could repackage this and use it for the soundtrack on a Schwarzenegger film. Later, they find a house with two other kids who are runaways, and by this point in the movie, not a damn thing has happened worth noting, except that Alma still looks like she's about to shit her pants. And if you made it this far, you're haggling with your credit card company to reimburse you for renting this bullshit. They find out that the occupants of the house don't want them there, and in typical Mark Wahlberg fashion, he uses his good looks and floppish persuasion to convince them otherwise. By this point, if you haven't shut off the movie, you're still waiting for something to happen. Then, out of nowhere, something comes out, and you can't just make out what it is, except it's the biggest fucking shotgun you've ever fucking seen. Holy shit. Talk about crossing the line. Mark Wahlberg's face says it all right there. I guess Shyamalan was going for low quality there, right? After leaving the house where the Second Amendment was originated, they find some crazy woman just sitting on her porch who invites them in for dinner. Now, I have to ask you this. Why the fuck would you trust someone after seeing two kids get blown away? But hey, it's Mark Wahlberg, who always makes great decisions. Remember when he decided to be a rapper with Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch?
Yo, it's about that time to bring forth the rhythm and the rhyme.
Yeah, look at that. A white rapper with his shirt off in all of his videos.
This is hot. You guys are the hottest thing since Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch.
Marky Mark, man, that guy sucks.
And that's just it. He always seems to dodge professional embarrassment. Don't get me wrong, I don't hate the guy. He's actually a good actor. But this movie hit rock bottom the second it was released in theaters. Do you remember the movie The Big Hit? I sure do. That movie was a piece of shit with one of the worst plots in movie history. There are tons of movies that ruined the reputation of so many actors and got them booted out of Hollywood faster than you can say kiss my ass. So they wake up the next morning and out of nowhere the woman loses her shit, demanding that they leave while Wahlberg tries to use the 40-year-old boyish charm that's failed throughout the entire movie. And I have to say, it's the most convincing attempt you'll ever see.
Mrs. Jones, could we talk calmly for a second? Just hear me out. See, I'm a teacher.
Give me a fucking break, man. Did you really think that was gonna work? Raise your hand if you all thought that was gonna work. If I woke up to someone like this, clenching their hand like that, I'd run for the fucking hills. It's clear at this point she's affected by the plant chemicals because she loses more of her shit smashing her face through the windows. Holy shit. Anyway, if you were dumb like me and didn't shut off the movie after the first 10 minutes, you'll find yourself smoking your last cigarette at the edge of a cliff before you jump. The climax to this movie is just bullshit. You'd think they would do something to salvage this movie, like ending with Wahlberg and his wife killing themselves off, or maybe zooming out, showing they're the only survivors to repopulate the planet. But no, they dropped the ball and failed to do something worthwhile and just ended the movie with everything going back to normal as if nothing had happened. What a piece of shit. If you had the patience to wait for the last 3 minutes, the movie finishes with the events occurring in France, as if anyone gives a shit, or would even watch the sequel even if they dared to make one. This is a movie you should check out for yourself, and you'll see what I'm talking about. When you tell your friends, you can sum up this movie in the following. Blah 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 Mark Wahlberg, blah 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 people killing themselves, blah blah running away, blah 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 blah, the end.